I was just watching the Sabine Hossenfeld video about the so-called Centre for Combating Digital Hate cracking down on so-called climate denial videos, or the so-called new denial of climate change. And I'm quite certain a lot of my content falls into that sort of bracket. And I'm quite certain also that I've been followed around in real life by vegan activists who I've long had, I've long been quite an outspoken critic of veganism and its ideology, its tenets, and the sort of science invoked by vegans and vegan activists, and quite a lot of the scientific misinformation that goes around actually in the mainstream. So when it comes to this sort of thing, this is a big attack on freedom of expression and freedom of inquiry, since we can't treat just the mainstream of science as being a reliable source of truth and as a reliable source of credible, valid opinion in spite of peer review and everything else, since I suspect quite a lot of the papers that do get out there that support things like this methane argument, this erroneous methane argument for climate change from animal agriculture, I suspect that a lot of that is propped up by big oil companies who wish to undermine livestock farming or scapegoat livestock farming for the deforestation caused by people who are trying to cultivate soy crops and palm oil crops for diesel and so on, and also from the companies who are fracking for natural gas, who are releasing probably the lion's share of novel methane emissions into the environment, and that gets really downplayed in academia. And it is, of course, after all, possible to pay off people who are peer reviewing papers in academic journals, because academic journals are, after all, run by academics, and even a university professor I don't think is unbuyable. I don't think they actually earn all that much money, really. They don't earn, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. I think they might earn, when they're rich, a shade over $100,000 a year. But, it's also people at the mid-level, I think, peer reviewing papers, like more senior researchers and so on, who earn less money than that, and who are possible to bribe and buy off. And if you shunt enough money into their bank accounts on the sly, I think it's very possible that these Joseph Poor type people do get their papers published and do get their so-called research out there that seeks to pin the blame of increased methane emissions on the increase in livestock farming, whereas in fact, the plants that the animals consume would be trapping CO2 from the environment, so it would cause no net increase in the climate, or in the greenhouse effect or anything like that. And it kind of does sidestep and ignore this problem of shale gas drilling, which puts all these toxic chemicals into the ground, fracks for natural gas, and then it entails the emissions of methane into the environment and so on. And there's all these sorts of quite hypocritical levels of thinking going on. And the new environmentalist movement, if you like, is deeply bound up with vegan activism, and loads of them are vegans. And I think it's centres like this Centre for Combating Digital Hate, these NGOs and so on, they're populated by people with very radical opinions, and very dogmatic and very committed to their ideological stance over the ideological stance of others. And they're really trying to bring about this kind of desecration of our cultures internationally, whereby they want to see a vegan world, right, or us all eating synthetic food, or food that's been produced by precision fermentation, or whatever this new stuff is that they're trying to get online, and it's all made in some horrifying chemical plant or whatever, and we enter this sort of Blade Runner future, which is what I see if we take these sorts of things too seriously. And we don't need any of that. We need our cuisines to be upheld, I think. We need to protect our traditions and things like this. I mean, can you imagine the country France without any cheese? Can you imagine Britain without fish and chips and a full English breakfast? It's sort of unimaginable, really, isn't it? It's sort of erroneous. It seems like folly that people do this at all, or engage in these kind of activist movements where they're trying to make everyone a vegan, or get everyone to adopt a vegan lifestyle. I think it's totally erroneous, and I think it becomes at the end of things very much divorced from any true environmentalism, especially considering how much soy those people consume. You know, what's soy responsible for? Obviously, deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, etc., etc. And the increases in deforestation correlate with the increases in people adopting vegan lifestyles. The initial vegan boom was in the late 1970s, early 1980s, when the lion's share of the deforestation in the Amazon kicked off. And it's just insane that people still proselytize for such a doomed movement and still parrot the same misinformation, really, in science, and something that isn't informed by a deep enough understanding of things like agriculture and earth sciences. And climate science has still a long way to go, I think, and astrophysics has a long way to go. I don't think we fully understand things like gravitational fields and the coronal heating problem. We've just made inroads into the coronal heating problem in a really serious way last year. About 7 months ago is when that research from the Catholic University of Leuven was published. And it's stuff to do with changes in the sun's magnetic field and these Alfvén waves and so on that are thought to heat up the corona of the sun. We're just at an elementary level of understanding that, really. And I think that these twangings of magnetic field lines and so on can be caused by loads of incoming dust, rocks, gas particles. As we rotate around the galactic center and get close to it in interstellar space, the sun would be accreting more material on its corona. The corona would be burning hotter, and that could be responsible for climate change, global warming. And you want to try and silence opinion that differs from a mainstream. You want to silence non-mainstream opinions on climate change and things like this. And people who suggest that man might not be responsible for climate change, that goes against your own self-hating rhetoric of humanity, that goes against your misanthropy, basically, and doesn't correlate or sit at parity with your own expectations of the climate change narrative, if you see what I mean. So it's deeply disturbing that people are doing this to me. It's deeply disturbing that they're so committed and so zealous and so hard line about a particular model of climate change, which is anthropogenic climate change. That's what they're really trying to promulgate, and that there is actually scientific difference of opinion out there, and there always has been. Freeman Dyson, for instance, didn't agree with the mainstream on climate change. He was no small, well, he wasn't he was a heavy hitter in science in his time, Freeman Dyson. But his views didn't correlate with the rest of the community. He bravely stood up against something that he thought was wrong. And that's what we have to do with our integrity, is stand up and say when we think something's wrong, and to plant our flag on a hill that, yes, we are willing to die on, and go down in history even, if such a thing ever happens, as someone who thought something was wrong, or someone who was spreading misinformation, if it really does come to that, and we don't find out the truth. And science does contain a huge amount of difference of opinion. Very often there is debate in science. It's not supposed to be doctrine. It's not supposed to be prescriptive and just a set of central tenets that you're supposed to adopt and never question. Like, what was it that Richard Feynman says? I think it was so science begins when you at the disbelief in experts or something like that. Who are experts? Obviously other scientists. That's when you start being a scientist, when you start disagreeing with the mainstream of opinion, or with the opinions of experts. That's when you become a scientist, isn't it? According to Richard Feynman. So thank you for watching, everybody. I'm sure this is getting tracked by AI from these NGOs and so on, and automatically reported to YouTube for misinformation, and kept out of people's recommenders for that sort of reason. And I hope you learned something as a result, and maybe gain a different perspective on the climate change argument and on varying arguments that are put forward by fanatics such as vegans, vegan activists, I should say, not all vegans, obviously, just the more committed, hardline, zealous, and irritating kind, should we say. Thank you for watching. Love you lots. Bye.